As a sportsman, there couldn't be much bigger shoes to fill than the ones receiving raps like this from United coach Ian Crook.
I think Daniel Beltrame is the best keeper in the league at the moment, so yes, we'll miss him, but as I say, more than happy to have Tom. We know we've got a good keeper there.
And that good keeper is 19-year-old Tom Willis. Born and bred in Darwin, Willis moved to Newcastle 6 months ago after a brief stint with the Brisbane Strikers, and he's been given the nod to fill in for Daniel Beltrame, who's been sidelined for 4 weeks with a shoulder injury.
Bellis has been one of the best, probably the best keeper in the season for United, and not only for United but the whole league. He's been very good, and I'll struggle keeping up with him, that's for sure, but I'll try my best.
The call-up caps off a stellar year for the young keeper. He's already worn Australian junior colours and now gets to fulfil a lifetime ambition of making an NSL run-on side.
This is definitely the break that all people wait for. I don't mind sitting on the bench because Bellis is playing so well, but to get my opportunity I just have to hope I take it.
But if he has anything to worry about, it would have to be the risk of performing too well. After all, Daniel Beltrame's not exactly a small bloke. Too well.
No, he's a big bloke by gentle giant. Very, very good keeper, and a nice bloke, so it's good.
Newcastle's fast becoming a club full of rep footballers. Jobe Wheelhouse now joining Tom Willis and the young Socceroos for the March World Championships in the United Arab Emirates. But while Middle East tensions continue to cast doubt over the tournament, United's aware that the selection of Willis, combined with Daniel Beltrame's injury, could see it without its first and second keepers for the playoffs.
I think we need to sit down and sort of have a discussion on which way we're going.
Both Wheelhouse and Willis, however, will see out the regular season, while as expected Milan Blagojevic rejoins the team for Saturday's away clash with Brisbane. Robbie Middleby has been rested again, along with Joey Shripper, who's troubled by pain in his previously injured foot. Meantime, it's been revealed United's home game against the Kings next Friday will feature an anti-smoking campaign by the club and Hunter Health. Kick the Habit will see the Ginninan Hill at Energy Australia Stadium designated a smoke-free zone and people offered incentives to quit. 20-a-day man Ian Crook has already signed on.
Now that we've made the 6, hopefully I can have a bit of a stress-free time, so it'll be a lot easier than it would have been 2 weeks ago.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
After 2 years of hearing evidence at Toronto Court, Coroner Jacqueline Milledge handed down her findings on why Robert Anderson, Ronald Brooker and Jeff Terry died in an explosion at a Rutherford grain plant on December 6, 1999. The explosion was caused when workers investigating a suspicious smell opened a hatch, causing an explosion when fresh air mixed with cottonseed dust. Coming under criticism in her findings, both the New South Wales Fire Brigades and some managers at the Cairns vegetable oil processing plant. Coroner Milledge said of the latter that they had earlier been warned during an insurance assessment of the potential for tragedy in the silos, but had done little to prevent it. She also said the fire brigades didn't have the appropriate experience in dealing with that kind of emergency. However, she added that since the explosion, the fire brigades have implemented new training procedures to deal with similar emergencies. Among her recommendations, that firefighter training include components of dealing with hazards in silos, drive-by audits to find potential trouble spots, and to have better signage around silos informing workers and emergency services of their contents. For Rona Anderson, one of the victims' wives, the inquest will go a long way in making sure this kind of tragedy isn't felt by other families.
I'll never put it behind me because I haven't got a husband now and the kids haven't got their father and their grandchildren, and I'll never ever get over this.
As trees age, the centre of the tree can decay, and in other cases some of the trees have been wounded from development that was done many years ago, and some of them have got some structural weaknesses that we know about today, but in the days when those trees were planted we didn't know about them.
Best known as a convenient rest and refuelling stop for East Coast travellers, Karua will soon be taken off the beaten track. A bypass of the town is expected to be in place by the end of next year, and while service station operators are expecting the worst, others in the tiny town of just 1,200 residents are more upbeat. David Driver runs the Jetty Village Holiday Park.
It'll make it a quieter town without any traffic. Like the main street will be nice and quiet. We've got the sewer going through now, it's on, and already, you know, there's a lot more people and new housing coming into town, and it's all positive.
The town's only real estate agent has a waiting list of buyers, but not one house to sell.
Well, people have realised now that Karua's on the major waterway of Port Stephens. We're being bypassed, which will make it a quieter place to live. We've been sewered now, and it's a really beautiful place to come and live.
And a new platform opened this week, giving travellers a chance to view the area's wetlands. Hope Simpson has headed the volunteer effort to create a new attraction to lure visitors to the town.
I think with the traffic gone, it'll be a much better place to be for the whole community, especially for families.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Some of Newcastle's most familiar sporting faces were at Noah's on the Beach this morning for the launch of the annual Red Cross Calling Appeal. Paul Harrigan, Matt Bingley, Daniel Beltrame and Robbie Middleby all dug deep to help the appeal reach its hunter target of $150,000. Hoping for a big weekend at Terry Hills will be Horizons touring professionals Nadina Taylor and Cherie Burns. At the start of today's play in the Australian Women's Open, both teed off equal 54th after carding a first round of 2 over par 74. After 15 holes, Taylor was holding on at 2 over and equal 55th, while Burns picked up 3 shots to head into the clubhouse on 1 under, sitting equal 34th. to cycling, and the new Charlestown bypass is expected to attract a class field of around 200 cyclists who will race along the stretch of road on Sunday morning, raising money for Lifeline. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
It's like stepping into an enchanted forest. For a small fee, you can view 500,000 shrubs and 6,000 trees arranged around a central rock waterfall that seems to soothe the soul.
25 hectares of display gardens made up of 12 separate gardens, ranging from the mosaic tea garden through to the children's storybook garden, the waterfall garden that you see behind us.
While strolling around the 8 kilometres of walking trails, you'll discover Australia's largest rose garden, boasting 130 species. Then there's the 180-year-old timber elephant gates from India and the hundreds of trimmed trees. It's hoped the gardens will become one of Australia's top attractions.
Upwards of 500,000 people will be here in the early years of its start-up, and then moving towards over 1 million people a year we'd expect to see through the property.
The Children's Garden offers littlies a world of fantasy. And after you've spent some time with Humpty Dumpty and Georgie Porgy and had a comfort stop in the Hansel and Gretel loo, there's plenty of time to sit down to a Mad Hatter's tea party. The garden's open at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Officers from Maitland to Tamworth joined forces for the first ever rural Operation Vikings. The enforcement included checks on ownership of cattle and permission to transport them to Singleton, Scone and Tamworth sale yards. As a result, police have searched one Hunter Valley property for allegedly stolen livestock. Penalty notices were also issued to truck drivers for failing to produce travelling stock statements.
The small but enthusiastic crowd gathered in Jesmond Park to begin a campaign calling on the state government to get serious about the roles of midwives. Organised by the New South Wales Maternity Coalition, the crowd rallied in support of one-to-one continuity of care.
Throughout your pregnancy and birth, you could meet 5, 6 different health professionals. That what we are saying is that when women have the care of one professional, they form a relationship, they trust that professional, and the outcomes are far better.
They'll present their case to Health Minister Craig Knowles next Wednesday when he visits Newcastle.
We are also seeking local support. We have 7 incumbent Labor male members, so we'd really like to hear from them as well.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
For a couple of hours this morning, the new road became a raceway, with many of Australia's best riders pedalling like the wind. Among those in Newcastle for the unique event was the Chilean national team, which is currently training for the Pan American Championships.
We needed to make a good prepare for this championship, and in Australia is the best place for the track races.
Racing in 5 divisions, the cyclists rode 10 laps of the 5-kilometre course that included a steady uphill climb that caused some casualties. After a spectacular sprint back down, riders were forced to brake hard and execute a 180-degree turn before the next lap. In the A-grade event, Sydney's Troy Glennon finished so far ahead of the pack, he crossed the line among the E-grade competitors.
We had a few guys in the break from our FRF Cruise team. So yeah, unfortunately not many of us are sprinters, so someone had to go and I took a chance and yeah, it paid off.
Organisers are hopeful of staging the event again, but with the road going into service next week, it's unlikely. It's hard to catch a 16-footer on Belmont Bay, and skippers in today's 20th annual sprint event had to contend with changeable conditions. Among those in red-hot form, former Australian champ Danny Anderson and his crew, who hoisted their spinnaker beautifully in the southwesterly breeze.
We've got 17 of the top 20 boats from the Australian Championships, which were held at Christmas. So all up over the 2 days, we're looking at over 50 skiffs competing.
Late this afternoon, fighting it out for top honours were current state and Australian champ Greg Surrant on luxury yacht charters, John Boyd aboard Skilled Engineering, and brothers Darren and Chris Nicholson and Gary Boyd aboard B&B Supplies.
It's not often a goal scorer is dropped the following week, but Ian Crook is set to do just that. After scoring Newcastle's goal in the 1-1 draw with Brisbane, Ryan Griffiths will now join 3 teammates in sitting out the club's final regular season match against Auckland's Football Kings. Peter Sekenis, Travis Dodd and midfielder Mark Wilson make up the foursome who are in danger of suspension after collecting 3 yellow cards. A 4th would rule them out of the first playoff match.
Can't afford for them to get silly booking in a game and miss out on the important one, which is in a fortnight's time.
He may have been kept on ice at training today, but Coach Crook is keen to give injured striker Joel Griffiths a run, even though he too faces the same problem with bookings.
That's the real difficult scenario. Joel's one booking away as well, but obviously Joel hasn't played now for 3-4 weeks.
As for contract negotiations, the club has agreed with some of the 11 players off contract and at least one new signing from overseas.
I'm always a bit reluctant to say anything that comes back and bites you on the backside. But no, we've gone a fair way down the line in terms of sorting somebody out. Yeah.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
While it doesn't grab the headlines like meningococcal disease, pneumococcal is just as dangerous. Last year, 106 people in the Hunter were infected with the bacteria. 14 of them died.
Unfortunately, 7 of the cases hadn't been vaccinated, so those deaths could perhaps have been prevented by vaccination with the pneumococcal vaccine.
People over 65 years of age are more likely to contract the disease.
As people become older, their immune systems become weaker and they're less able to respond to infections.
As well as causing pneumonia, symptoms can also include chills, fever, body aches, chest pain, a rapid heart rate, and sometimes vomiting and convulsions. A simple injection can vaccinate against the disease and protect the recipient for 5 years.
At this time of year when people are thinking about getting their influenza vaccine, many of the people who really need influenza shots should also need the pneumococcal shots. So people with chronic lung disease, or in fact any chronic medical condition, should ask their GP if they need the pneumococcal shot this year.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
We just got to make sure that the training is accessible and flexible and of the highest standards, and that's what my job is.
Cost increases beyond its control has seen Port Stephens Council slide from trading in the black in 1996 to a current deficit of around $9 million. The budget blowout has been attributed to insurance, wage increases and litigation. So now, the time has come for residents to kick the tin.
Our community is telling us very clearly from feedback they want to see more money spent on roads and the environment. What we are asking the Minister is to provide us with some additional capital funding to do those projects which otherwise would remain unfunded in our budget.
If approved by the state government, the increases mean an extra $76 per annum for the average household. That's made up of a 3% rate rise and a special levy of $32 to assist with capital works, plus a domestic waste management charge increase from $216 to $247 per annum. Also high on the Port Stephens Council agenda is aircraft noise. The Department of Defence has handed down its recommendations for new buildings constructed near flight paths, which will ultimately see strict guidelines introduced. At a substantial cost to owners, requirements will include soundproof materials and double-glazed windows. Not only will new building guidelines be introduced at a substantial cost to individuals, but are sure to give Council its fair share of headaches. It must now consider a range of issues, including what action needs to be taken for extensions to existing dwellings. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Swansea Heads and the coast around it can be treacherous. Just ask the people aboard these boats that ran aground on Moon Island almost a decade ago, only to be rescued by the NBN helicopter. Now, technology has brought a new piece of safety equipment available to anyone with access to the internet.
What boaties can do now is before they even leave home, they can get a condition of the bar, see whether it's rough or smooth or whatever. Then they can make the decision of whether to go out boating or not.
The camera, sponsored by a local business, is mounted in the Coast Guard's Swansea Headland radio base and shows the condition of the bar updating every 10 seconds.
There's been numbers of lives lost on the bar, numbers of and numerous boats that have been washed up on the breakwall. They can make the decision now not to go, which is a much better decision than getting out there and finding you're in trouble.
Also going online today, a camera looking south across Belmont Bay. Funded by Lake Macquarie City Council, this camera is mounted in the control room at Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club. But as we found out this afternoon, the image is a little unclear in wet weather.
If they simply go to stickybeak.com.au, once they get there on the home page, there'll be a link that says webcams. If they simply click on the webcam link.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. This is Belmont Hospital's current emergency department. It's cramped and has just 4 beds. This is the new emergency department that will open soon.
Well, it's about 80% larger than the old one. It comes equipped with more consulting rooms, better facilities for the patients both to be wait and to be treated, and better areas for staff to analyse and consult.
The contractors handed over the keys to hospital management today. Not only does it feature more beds, it also has a triage consultation area, a separate ambulance entry bay and rooms for doctors.
There are 2 consulting rooms and clerical facilities which will enable an after-hours service which doesn't exist in this area at the moment to commence operation early in the new year.
Meanwhile, stage 2 of the hospital redevelopment is now before Lake Macquarie Council and on public display.
Which will see a new level go on the hospital to incorporate a perioperative day surgical centre and improved facilities for day surgery, and also reorganisation of the ground floor services of the hospital to increase the medical imaging and medical record services of the hospital.
A way connecting the new emergency department and the hospital still needs to be built. It's expected the first patients will be treated in the new department in April. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
The first morning peak after the Charlestown bypass opening and the northbound lanes of Lookout Road, New Lambton Heights would choke with slow-moving traffic. It's a scene that was repeated at various locations along the Newcastle inner city bypass as motorists came to terms with the change resulting from the $107 million addition to the Lower Hunters Main Road network. Some were prepared to grin and bear it.
It'll probably get better after we go, maybe a couple of weeks down the track when everyone gets used to it, but it'll be fine.
For others, the inconvenience was too much.
Ridiculous, sort of. I've never been stuck back so far as this traffic in 8 years I've been driving up and down this road.
New Lambton Heights residents were expecting problems between John Hunter Hospital and Blackbutt Reserve.
It was as we predicted. It's creating a bottleneck, unfortunately, the Charlestown bypass.
The RTA says the worst problem is with southbound lanes near Carnley Avenue where 2 lanes merge into one. Congestion is expected to ease later this week when both southbound lanes through the area become operational. However, New Lambton Heights residents want more done, demanding the state government build the John Hunter Jesmond section of the bypass next, rather than the Shortland Sandgate stage, which is currently planned.
That bypass is just creating a bottleneck, and the way to fix it is to put Highway 23 to the west of the hospital, down to the Jasmine roundabout.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Wet weather forced the Knights indoors today, but it's an ongoing ankle problem that may sideline Tamana Tahu for the opening round.
He's probably the only real concern, and Josh Smith would find himself starting in the team if that was the case.
Given the amount of off-season injury concerns, the squad name today impresses the coach.
I think we've got a very strong look about a football team and all of the key players in the key positions.
An 18-man squad will travel across the Tasman with Kurt Gidley to partner his brother Matt in the centres, while a reshuffle in the pack has Ben Kennedy suiting up at lock.
It gives me the ability to roam a little bit, get over on the right side a little bit more and hopefully have more quality in my runs.
The big back rower has enjoyed his best off-season for some time, escaping the surgeon's knife and enjoying a full pre-season training. In saying that, a minor leg complaint meant no trial football. But everyone is keen to get the first game and longest road trip out of the way.
I think going there first up is probably as good a time as any. I know the boys are looking forward to the game. I guess it's one of those road trips you'd like to get out of the way early on.
The team leaves for Auckland on Friday.
I think I was a bit like a stunned mullet at first, but it was just a reward for a lot of hard work that I've had to do. And of course the old body finds it hard to keep doing it too.
They're Port Stephens' latest aircraft noise-affected residents, but unlike others, their problem is that they can't build homes because council is yet to approve housing development applications. That's despite the group being prepared to live with the noise.
We're willing to sign an acknowledgement that council has done as much as it legally possibly can do at this present point in time, but they are still using the crystal ball attitude where we think something might or might not happen in the future, so therefore we're not going to make a decision.
Council says the delay is because it's still working through new defence information, which threatens to significantly increase the cost of housing construction.
hopefully we can speed up the process, get a different interpretation to the problems so that the design of the homes and the insulation cost won't be excessive.
The angry residents are now assessing their legal options. Mayor Nell says if the impasse can't be resolved, a commission of inquiry could be held to set